A Rockford nurse loses her job because of her pro-life beliefs. Today we'll find out how that nurse is fighting back. I'm Emily Zender, the director of Illinois Right to Life, and joining me today is her attorney with the law firm Mauck and Baker, Noel Sterrett. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
So Sandra Mendoza was a pediatric nurse for the Winnebago County Health Department for 18 years. Why now? Why was she fired now?
She served the health department for 18 years, providing immunizations, screenings for in the pediatric department, serving children. Just an excellent employee. And last year, the new health administrator came in and said, we're going to integrate women's health with pediatrics, so you're going to have some new responsibilities. And when she informed Ms. Mendoza about those responsibilities, particularly saying, in addition to all that you've been doing for us well for 18 years, you need to provide or be comfortable with providing abortion referrals and Plan B prescriptions as well as contraception. Ms. Mendoza said, I can't. I've been serving the children. I'm pro-life. I'm a devout Catholic, and this violates my conscience. I just can't do this. Upon putting the administration on notice that that's what her firm conviction was and her conscience was and her desire to stay serving the children, the new health administrator came in and said, well, you've got 2 weeks to decide. You can take a demotion as a part-time food inspector if you want to remain in the employ of the county, or you can quit. And so being put into that terrible position of basically saying, if you want to stay in this department, you have to be comfortable providing abortion-related services, Ms. Mendoza says, I can't. In good conscience, I can't. And so she was forced out of her position and ultimately lost wages, benefits, and had to face the uncertain future of being unemployed.
Now, being faced with being forced to facilitate abortions or losing your job, losing your ability to provide for your family, walk me through what that was like for her and what she was facing as a mother.
Yeah, it was devastating. When you're sitting there, it's not as if the nurses are making a lot of money as it is, but when they go in and they're serving people day in and day out, my mom is a nurse, and you just watch their heart. They go in to care for people. It's not as much about the money or the fame or the attention, but she was serving the children, and then to lose that job that she had faithfully done for 18 years, and then to go back and say, well, how do I piece this together? Can I get unemployment? Where am I going to find the next paycheck? She was able to work part-time at a special needs home in Rockford, which is wonderful, but it put her back in terms of what she wanted to do with her family, how she wanted to support her children, who were, one was about to go to college, and just all the turmoil that one can expect when you lose your job, especially one that you've counted on for 18 years.
Now, if our staff search the Winnebago County Department of Public Health's website for abortion, see what services they provided, and the word abortion comes up once in their entire website. It comes up in actually a statement that was issued, I presume, because of this issue, this lawsuit here. So to be specific, to be clear, what services are they providing that she had done?
Well, I believe that she was asked to do was, you need to be in a position to provide abortion referrals, contraception, and participate in the provision of contraception and abortifacients like Plan B. And so that's...
But a lot of people will say Plan B is not actually an abortifacient.
Well, they might say that, but again, what we're talking about here is the right of conscience. And so a lot of people say that a baby and human life doesn't begin at conception, even though we know scientifically it does. When you have a belief, even if it's confirmed or not by science, that this is what this medication or this is what this procedure does, that brings into bear your conscience. And when the Illinois Healthcare Right of Conscience Act was passed, the Illinois General Assembly recognized we're not all going to agree on some of these really hot-button issues like abortion. But what we can agree on is in these situations where we have a nurse, a doctor, or a pharmacist that has the right of conscience, we're going to protect that right. Because we don't have to agree on abortion, but we can agree that everybody should be able to provide and engage in the practice of medicine in accordance with their conscience. And so that is what is at stake in the Illinois Healthcare Right of Conscience Act. why the law is so helpful and so beneficial and so needed. And it's really it's a gold standard as I see it across the country in terms of protecting doctors, nurses, pharmacists that are trying to adhere to their Hippocratic oath, doing no harm, and also just protecting life. And we need good doctors, nurses, pharmacists in service, and we shouldn't try to exclude or make medicine only for those that are comfortable with abortion-related services.
And the FDA certainly says that Plan B prevents implantation of the unborn child.
Right, yeah.
Now, so you filed a lawsuit on behalf of Ms. Mendoza. What are you pointing to saying that we should get relief?
Yeah, so the Illinois Healthcare Right of Conscience Act is very strong. It provides that no public or private employer can take an adverse employment action against somebody for exerting their right of conscience and the provision of some type of medical care. And the Act provides not only the recovery of damages, but treble damages, which means 3 times the damages that they are rightfully entitled to in terms of just, lost wages, for example. Because ultimately what needs to be sent, the General Assembly thought it was important to say, you can't take these actions against nurses and doctors because if you do so, you're not going to be just held responsible for the loss of wages, but treble damages, because we're going to try to make sure that nobody does this. And it's hopefully preventative for other health departments, other private employers that may, your Walgreens or your other ones that hire pharmacists, so that they don't say, well, look, maybe it will just cost us the wages if we get rid of this guy. But they're actually on the hook also for attorney's fees and costs. So ultimately, we're trying to vindicate Ms. Mendoza's right of conscience and at this point, help restore a lot of what she lost.
Was there no accommodation that they could provide?
Well, what they tried to say was the accommodation was you can go work as a part-time food inspector.
A pediatric nurse.
A pediatric nurse, yes. So when you have spent 18 years in the service of children with pediatric training, and then all of a sudden you're turning around and saying, because of my commitment to what I believe is pro-life and my Hippocratic oath, I'm going to be now out of my job as a pediatric nurse. I'm going to stop. They're going to make me stop doing all that I have been doing and willing to continue doing, and I have to go work as a part-time food inspector. It's not a combination. It's a demotion, if anything, clearly, and it's something that put her in a terrible position.
You said it was a part-time. It wasn't a full-time.
Yeah, as I understand it, it was a temporary position, and again, one that is frankly unconscionable when you think about what that means to a pediatric nurse when you're faced with this job change or this demotion.
On the hearts and minds of many people in Illinois right now is Senate Bill 1564, which would force all medical professionals, pregnancy resource centers, to refer for abortion, talk about the benefits of abortion. If Governor Rauner signs this bill that's sitting on his desk right now, can we assume that more situations like what happened to Ms. Mendoza will pop up? Is that what's going to happen as a result?
Yeah, I firmly believe so. Again, it's kind of taking the government message and saying, well, you have to be our messenger, doctor, pharmacist, nurse, regardless of what your conscience says about abortion, what you believe about abortion, you need to make sure that these women still have access, still have awareness or are informed about the benefits of abortion. And I think that's a violation of our freedom of speech, in addition to our religious liberty and our right of conscience, because you're really putting a government message in the mouths of people that don't share that message and can't agree with it. Our hope is not only does Ms. Mendoza's case highlight the importance of the Healthcare Right of Conscience Act, but I hope that it will ultimately be a case in point as to why Governor Rauner should veto the bill as well.
Well, we certainly hope that he does. No, Illinois Rights for Life has had people reach out to us and say, I'm in a similar situation. I am being forced to work with Planned Parenthood or forced to facilitate abortions. But they mainly reach out to us to vent because
Sure.
they feel like I cannot lose my income because it is supporting my family.
Right.
So they're faced with that or participating in an abortion. What do you have to say to those who are watching, that person watching right now, who is in that situation and is really struggling with it?
I just would like to encourage you that as Ms. Mendoza stood for life, sometimes we're called to take very difficult decisions. And so I understand, even in talking with Ms. Mendoza, about how difficult that is. So I completely appreciate the difficulty of saying, if I do this, I could lose my job. If I do this, I can lose my income, and all that entails. And frankly, that's why I was so encouraged by Ms. Mendoza and what she did. She stood for life, regardless of what the costs were going to be. She knew that this was going to put her in a position that was going to be very difficult, and she was hopeful that the administration was going to force her out, as they did. And so I would just encourage them to know that there are pro-life civil liberties attorneys in Illinois that are interested in helping them. There are organizations across the state, not only pro-life attorneys, but there's pro-life organizations. So I think it's very important that you don't think of yourself as being alone. And now all of a sudden you have other nurses standing up and other doctors saying, contacting the Winnebago board and saying, enough's enough, we can't. This is not how our county should be run. We should not be forcing out pro-life nurses and doctors. This is not how we can be treating this issue.
Well, speaking of that culture, the Heritage Foundation says by 2030, Illinois will have a shortage of 18,000 nurses here in Illinois. And the Northwestern University also says that 50% of graduates from the medical profession, or graduating, leave Illinois to practice someplace else. Does this, along with Ms. Mendoza's case, along with Senate Bill 1564, point to the hostility growing in the medical profession?
I think it's very difficult. So I have not only my grandfather, but my mother is a nurse. My grandfather was a doctor. My brother-in-law is a doctor. Watching them go into medicine. My wife's a nurse. Her father-in-law's internal medicine. I'm watching what's going on, and as opposed to what happened in yesteryear, where you go in to serve and you provide for people, and it remains a noble calling today. But what we're seeing more and more is that the regulations and the burdens of having to comply with different federal regulations, and then when you add on to that, not just the regulatory burden that nurses, doctors, and hospitals are seeing, but you add on to that, well, not only do you have to deal with all these things, but you're going to be asked to do things that are against your conscience. We're no longer putting patient care at the fore, and we're no longer valuing the role of the nurse and the doctor in terms of their personal identity, their calling, but we're basically saying, well, your calling and your conscience is irrelevant in America.
Tell me real quick about the response from the community in Rockford. They've had a hard go with the Rockford abortion clinic that closed down finally a few years back.
Yes.
That clinic had terrible health and sanitary violations, not sterilizing surgical instruments before inserting them into women's bodies. They would hang chickens to crucifixes in the windows. The community has really had a hard go with abortion.
Yeah, it's a sensitive issue for me, because I remember walking and sidewalk counseling with my mom when I was a little boy in front of that Dr. Ragsdale's clinic. And so, so glad to see that over the years, all the prayers, all the efforts of the pro-life community in Rockford won the day. And to see that abortion clinic shuttered is a wonderful thing. But the battle for life is every day. And we have victories on the way. And even if we don't have the victories, we still have the victory because we stood up for conscience. And so,
and that same community is
same community is now rallying to support Ms. Mendoza and rally in front of the public health department. I think the Monday after we filed suit, and just seeing how when one person takes a stand, how that encourages everyone else. And that's what I'm hopeful that just in some sense, when the lawsuit's filed and we get that type of response, that's already an initial victory. Raising the awareness about the Illinois Healthcare Right of Conscience Act is critical. And also just encouraging those nurses and doctors and pharmacists in Illinois to say, look, here's one individual who stood up. And this is what we need to continue to see. And I would encourage everybody to take a look. What's going on in your community? How can you get involved? How can you participate with Illinois Right to Life or the other organizations that are standing for life?
Well, we know law is notoriously slow, but tell us the next step of this lawsuit.
It is notoriously slow. We try to push it as fast as we can. The next step would be to hear back from the county. Typically what municipal defendants do is they try to get the case dismissed, and so we'll see. Right now we've just filed the complaint, so it's early. We don't know what the response is at this point, but we're going to wait to see what the county does, and that they'll file something probably in the next 30 to 60 days. And then we'll be in court and off to the races.
Great. Well,
even if it's a slow race.
This certainly is a hot button issue, and we will be following it very closely.
All right.
Chasing healthcare workers away from the healthcare industry is a disastrous policy for Illinois. If you or someone you know find yourself in this same situation, reach out to us. We're here to help you. I'm Emily Zender with Illinois Right to Life. Thanks for watching.